Hello again, everyone. This is Gilmer, and I am back to start another Let's Play. I have been gone a while, been gone about 2 years, but I'm back to do a Let's Play and to restart my channel. I could have done a channel update and explain why I was gone, but I figured I would just go straight into a Let's Play because that's what people really want. A couple of people had asked me to do a Pike and Shot campaigns Let's Play, so I thought I'd start that with a fairly short scenario. It's not a campaign at all, but it is a scenario, and it is the Battle of Vienna 1683. Uh, a little background on the Battle of Vienna 1683. The Ottoman Turks had attacked into uh, southeastern Austria and also through Hungary, and at the time, the the Pope in Rome decided that they would form a holy league to defend against the Ottoman Turks, and several nations signed on to the deal. One of them being the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, another being Austria, the Habsburgs, and their empire, and also a lot of the Catholic states of the Holy Roman Empire. And so when the Ottoman Turks attacked into Austria and sieged Vienna, the Pope called on the Holy League to defend Vienna. So what happened is all these states got their troops together and marched to Vienna, and it was a lot of different troops, to be honest, a lot of different little nations or nation states. The like I said, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Holy Roman Empire, Austria, Bavaria, Bohemia, which is I think modern day Czechoslovakia or the Czech Republic and Slovakia. They're two different nations now. Franconia, Saxony, Swabia, the Habsburg Hungarians, and secretly Wallachia or Wallachia, or however you pronounce it. A prince from Wallachia also marched with the Holy League, and the Holy League obviously was a group of Catholic nations. And you might wonder why France wasn't part of it. Well, France and Austria didn't get along, and France really didn't give a rip if Austria was taken over by the Turks, which I think was a little bit short sighted. And I also think Spain was kind of allied, or maybe even the ruler of Spain was also the ruler of France at the time. I'm not sure. I think there was some kind of emperor that kind of ruled both of them at some point. It might be the case, but they didn't come to this battle. But the ones that I've named so far did show up at the battle. Some of the somewhat more well known names that showed up were John Sobieski III, or Jan, the Polish spelling and pronunciation is Jan Sobieski III, Charles of Lorraine, and Eugene Francis of Savoy, who was one of the most successful military commanders of that time. And opposing them were the Ottoman Turks, obviously, and Kara Mustafa, the Grand Vizier of Ottoman Turkey. And the troops on each side were, the Turks had about 140,000, and the Holy League had about 80,000. And when the Holy League troops got, first formed up and got together, there was a little bit of confusion or a little bit of discussion or a little bit of angst maybe over who would lead the forces of the Holy League. They didn't want to really give it to Jan Sobieski. Poland was still considered kind of a backwards country, a bunch of barbarians maybe. They had come to Christianity a little bit later than some of the other nations, so nobody really wanted to give it to the command to Jan Sobieski, but he was the only king there. There were a lot of princes, a lot of dukes, a lot of archdukes, but he was the only king, and he did eventually take command and won a very convincing victory. A little bit of the Details of the battle: the Turks were sieging Vienna, as I had mentioned before. They had been doing it for 2 months, and Ernst von Rudiger, I believe, was the commander of the Vienna garrison, and they had been very courageous, and they knew also that if they surrendered, the Turks were probably going to slaughter all of them, because there had been a couple of villages that had surrendered to the Turks, and they still slaughtered everybody in the village. So they knew that they were in trouble. But on September 12th, the troops of the Turks noticed there were troops on a mountain to the west called Kallenberg, the Kallenberg Mountain. And they were like, who's up there? Who's up there? Well, of course, it was the Holy League, and they, eventually they figured it out, obviously. And part of the details of the battle are the infantry of the Holy League came down and engaged the Turks. The Turks didn't turn the Janissaries, their elite infantry, from the siege. They had the Janissaries stay against the siege, or still holding the siege, while the rest of the infantry turned around. And they thought they would be able to defeat them with just that infantry. Well, the infantry for both sides, they fought to a standstill until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's when the Polish arrived on the battlefield. It was designed that way. They had 30,000 cavalry, the largest cavalry charge in the world ever in history, spearheaded by 3,000 of the Polish hussars, which they're not like the light cavalry that you might have heard about in the 1800s with the Napoleon and those armies. The Polish hussars were heavy cavalry, and they were shock cavalry, and so they were the spearhead of the cavalry charge. They attacked, and the Turks were pretty much done at that point. A rumor arose within the Turk ranks that somebody was looting their tents. So then some of them started, moving back to their tents, and before you know it, it became a rout, and the Polish and the Holy League cavalry were just riding people down and killing them left and right. It was a complete and utter victory. Sobieski, when he sent a letter to Rome, he was quoted as saying to the Pope in the letter, "We came, we saw, God conquered." And it pretty much is considered the turning point in Ottoman Turkey's fortunes. They never really threatened Europe ever again. And really, they went into almost a decline after that. They kind of had a renaissance, I think, from about 1700 to 1800 maybe, but they were pretty much on the downhill slide there. And of course, they were still around at the beginning of World War One. They joined the Axis, and when the Axis lost, Turkey's empire pretty much fell apart. At the time of World War One, you might have heard of Lawrence of Arabia. He was helping the Arabs rebel against Turkey, and pretty much all of the people that they had subjugated over the years that they had been in existence pretty much rebelled and took their freedom from Turkey, and Turkey has kind of gone down to just being a nation at this point. Anyway, so that's a little bit of the background on this. So let's go ahead and start this battle. So this Pike and Shot is a very simple game. It's not real complicated. After you played a couple of turns, you pretty much know exactly what you're doing. As you can see, Vienna's up here. Sterenberg is Ernst von Rudiger. He was, as I mentioned, the leader of the garrison. And then down here you have the Holy League, Charles of Lorraine. And then you have Kara Mustafa and the Turks in between the Holy League and Vienna. And the Janissaries are in this area still sieging Vienna, and then the rest of the troops are going to turn and fight the Holy League. And you see King Sobieski is over here. One little quibble I have with the Pike and Shot's game is that the Hussars in this game are not as strong as they were historically, if you ask me, because they go up against some of the Tartars, and it's almost as if they're on even footing with the Tartars, and that was not the case. They were heavy cavalry, and the Tartars were light cavalry. If they had fought head to head, the heavy cavalry would have won easily. Of course, the Tartars were known for hit and run, that type of thing. So I don't really agree with that part, but I think for gameplay purposes, it's made it a much more interesting game, a much more fun, a much more balanced game. As you go through the game, you'll notice that the Germans are very strong. Their troops are very strong. They tend to do very well in this game. So you have the Prince of Waldeck here, I believe. I think he was a prince, and then you have all the different names of all the people, the last names of all the people that were commanders on this side. So let's get going. And the first turn is the Catholic turn. This is a portrait of King John Sobieski. I'm going to just pronounce it the way English people would pronounce it. The English pronunciation of Jan is John. So if you look up here, object, rout the enemy army by routing at least 40% of their troops and 25% more than you have lost, or routing 60% of their troops. At the start of the Catholic turn, Catholic troops 0%, Ottoman troops routed 0%, and that's pretty much what you're going to see. I've played this battle a couple of times already. I've done pretty well. The first time I played it, I played it on the highest difficulty because I didn't realize that the scenario, when you save it, is set on difficulty 5, which is the highest, and I almost won that one. And then when I realized that and set it to just normal difficulty, of course I started winning it. So the first thing we want to do is kind of take a look at the battlefield. It's pretty flat except for the far right, and they have troops in this area. I know that already, and I don't want to let them have the high ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my troops, the Hussars here. I'm actually going to, well, as you can see, there's the Hussars and then the Polish wing Hussars, and there's a little bit of difference. If you want to, I don't know if you can. Well, anyway, if you take a look at it, it's determined horse, highly superior, 250 of 250, impact mounted, pistol, melee, and steady. And then these are light horse. The hussar. These are the light cavalry hussars that I was talking about. They're not the Polish hussars who are heavy cavalry. And if you can see the hussars, if you can see this portrait of a hussar, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right, but they had this contraption that was attached to their shoulders, and when they were charging, these are feathers, hundreds of feathers attached to kind of almost like a bamboo or something, piece of wood attached to their shoulders, and when they charged, it would flare out behind them and whistle as they were charging. It is, from what I understand, a very horrifying noise for people who, are obviously were being charged because they knew they were about to have their asses kicked. To be honest, not to put too fine of a point on it, I'm not going to move my troops much from here. I'm going to let them come to me, and that makes the first couple of turns a fair bit boring. But you don't want to attack them. Because, see, they're all in fortifications, and you don't want to attack them while they're in fortifications. Now, we have medium guns, We have we should have 4 batteries. I guess they're all medium guns. And see, this is a little bit, as you can tell from the way I described the battle, this is a little different than what the actual battle was. The original battle, the initial part was the infantry fought the infantry, and the cavalry came later. But you know, I mean, I think for the purposes of the scenario, they made it this way because it's just better for gameplay purposes. So I have my guns; they can reach the front lines of the Turks. So I'm going to shoot. Oh, that's pretty loud. But I'm going to shoot my guns off. And the way you do that is you just select the unit. It says medium guns, artillery average, medium artillery severely disordered. I'm wondering why they're severely disordered. But when you cursor over the target you want, it'll tell you the range, whether it's a full arc of fire, and how many casualties they'll probably inflict. As you can see, I would have 9 here, possible 9, and a possible total of 11 here. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot them. I believe that's it. If you press tab, you will go to every unused unit, and that's that. So as you can see, one thing I'll mention, and I always say one thing I'll mention, or this is the game's called Pike and Shot, and it is right. It was originally set. The original game was set right during the time that they were moving from pikes as one of the most dangerous weapons to be used on a battlefield to actual firearms, and it was kind of a transition period. I think in 1683 they had kind of transitioned mostly to firearms, but there was still some pike. But this is probably one of the last battles where heavy cavalry was used significantly, because 1700s, if you think about it, that's the age of musket kind of, and you think of the redcoats from England. Oh, and I didn't mention England as having participated in this, but as most people know, the English had broken with the Catholic Church when King Henry VIII was ruling in the 1500s, and they had not gone back to the church, and actually they've never gone back to the church. So that's part of the reason why they're not part of the Holy League. I mentioned France and Spain, the two of the other fairly large powers. I said the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The Poles managed to make the battle. The Lithuanians were late, and they got there about 2 days late, and they missed the battle, but they were coming. So, I guess you could make kind of the Game of Thrones joke about the late Walder Frey, because he always comes late to battles. But I don't know any of the details about why they were late, so I'm not going to disparage them in any way for missing the battle. I'm sure that they wouldn't have marched all that way just to not be there for the actual battle. But regardless, at the end, when you want to turn, you want to end your turn, and I've shot all of my my batteries, I believe. If you've already used it, it'll say can't shoot, already shot. And so I've used up all my battles. I mean all my batteries. So I forget how to actually end my turn. Oh, here it is. That's it. So this is a residual shooting phase, as it's pretty obvious. And units that have not yet shot this turn will do so automatically. So the Turks are going to fire. Oh, I didn't shoot my guns from the. Well, that's okay. They're shooting for me. This is a portrait of Kara Mustafa. And as you can see, the AI immediately starts coming for us. It is what it is. I think, I don't think they really have a choice. They in real life, they outnumbered the Holy League, so maybe that's why they're aggressive. Okay. So as you can see, the Turks have more guns, more artillery than I do. I think that is a little ahistorical as well because I think they ended up losing a lot of their guns in swollen rivers, and so I don't, that's one of the reasons they had trouble taking the city of Vienna. It was actually a fortress, as you can see if we pan over it. I mean, I don't think this is anywhere near to scale or anything like that, but as you can see, they had heavy fortifications. It was a heavily fortified city at the time. Um, the walls were somewhat crumbling because they had been sieged for 2 months, and this guy can't shoot because he's not facing the right way. And these are all. Oh. That was a little strange. Here we go. Got two. You'll see some of that. I mean, it's nothing. It's nothing to be too concerned about. Um, these late Imperial horse. They have a carbine and a pistol, so they are a little. They're pretty good. Dragoons have muskets, and then you have where are the cuirassiers. The cuirassiers. Let's see. The cuirassiers do not have any firearms, and so they're kind of at a disadvantage at any kind of range. But they're pretty strong. Horse superior. They do have pistols. I didn't realize that. But you're probably going to use them mostly for charging. Mostly for charging. If you didn't hear that, sorry about that. It is kind of loud. And what you want to do is just wear them down There's just regular horse. Um, Veteran Pike and Shot are very good units. Polish winged horses. And oh well. So I'm a little worried about so many of these, but if you look at the Tartars, they're light horse, they have bows, and they're swordsmen. So I'm not as worried about them as I normally would be. So let's just kind of cycle through. Okay, so this guy had not shot yet, so we'll shoot. We'll shoot his guns. Most of these guys won't be able to do anything at first until they get people in range. So I think that's it. Let's see. No, well out of range. I might move these guys up just because, as you can see, the Janissaries, they're medium foot, but they are considered. These say they're average, but they were at the time they were considered some of the best infantry in the world, from what I remember. That they were very, very much feared to an extent. The dragoons. What do I want to do with them? I think I'm going to move them. Start move them over here because I think this flank it turns out to be fairly easy. This flank tends to get turned a little bit, and it's mostly because the Polish hussars are not considered. See, they have King John Sobieski commanding a Bardiche Musketeers unit, which is medium foot, but he was actually he was a hussar. He was mounted. He had heavy armor. He commanded the hussars. So I don't really understand the whole point of putting him there, but that's, as I mentioned, gameplay. The person that developed the scenario, that's what they did. And as you can see, those heavy fortifications. Yeah, see these haiduks, they're not very good. And these poorly armed levies, they're horrible. They're the first to break every time. This scenario takes about it can take up to about 3 hours, I think, maybe a little longer. And these over here tend to move more towards the middle. As you can see, some of the Janissaries are turning around. This little arrow facing out means they're facing towards or facing away from the city. Okay, so this unit's morale state has just dropped to disrupted. This means that its morale and cohesion are impaired. It will fight at somewhat reduced effect. The casualties it has suffered will further reduce its fighting ability. There is a chance each turn that it may rally to the next level up to steady, which means that that's what you're trying to do is you're, you're trying to disrupt them. So it goes from so they just got disrupted. They're we're greatly advantaged against the enemy tatars, however you pronounce that word, Tartars, because the enemy Tartars are like cavalry, and I believe the Haiduks are. Well, we'll check out and see what they are. To be honest, I'm not real positive. Um, Medium foot, so they're pretty good against. They're pretty good against light cavalry, to be honest. So let's see. Let's do our guns first. Our guns aren't really doing real well. Let's move these guys up. Nope, I don't want to charge. I tend not to charge. I tend to like to kind of hold back until I get them disrupted. The next thing after disrupted is fragmented, and then after fragmented is broken or routed. And that's really what you really want to get them to do is to rout. So we have 4 units sitting in front of us. These Sipahis are mounted and they have carbines, and they're supposed to be pretty good troops. So we want to make sure see we're at a disadvantage to their bows, but we do have pistols. Oh boy. I don't know that those pistols really work all that well. To to move, you have to limber the artillery, I believe, or unlimber it. I don't know which one is which, but you have to get them ready to move. All right, let's check and see who hasn't moved yet. Um, I did move them. Let's see. I do want to move them, and we'll turn them. I'm not going to move this line of troops. Oh, he can shoot. Now, you can turn them before you shoot. And one of the reasons why is your arc of fire. My arc of fire was partial, and now it's full. So I get more casualties when I shoot if I turn towards them and I'm facing them. Veteran Lee. No, I don't want to charge. Cuirassiers, a Polish winged hussars, armored Cossacks. Out of range. I'm not going to move them. I believe that is it for now. Yeah. So let's go ahead and end this turn. Okay, so this unit's morale state has just dropped to broken. They are routing. This means that its morale and cohesion are broken and the men are fleeing for their lives. The unit may possibly rally to fragmented if it outdistances pursuit, but until then it cannot fight. And also, FYI, you can't move them. You can't do anything with them. You can't give them orders. They won't take orders. Any friendly unit in an adjacent square at the moment a unit breaks may also suffer a morale state drop. And that's very important because that can ruin an army's morale completely. So they didn't. The victors will pursue. I didn't attack them. The pursuit may last several turns. No orders can be issued to pursuers until they cease pursuing. And that's another thing you have to know. If the routers leave the battlefield, the pursuers may also leave the battlefield chasing them. If they do, there is a chance on each subsequent turn that they will return. Pursuers may charge a fresh enemy that they meet in the course of their pursuit. And that's something to also remember. So they just disrupted because that enemy routed. This unit's morale has just dropped to fragmented. This means that its morale and cohesion are severely impaired and they're close to breaking. That one unit went from disrupted, I believe, to broken and jumped right over fragmented, which can happen. It will fight at a severely reduced effect. The casualties it has suffered will further reduce its fighting ability. There is a chance that each turn that it may rally to disrupted. So that's it in a nutshell. You try to get them. That's it in a nutshell. You tried to get them to break. Residual shooting phase. Auto brakes. One of my units just went disrupted these Hydux. Uh, and another of my units, my Hussars, just disrupted as well. I think what I'm going to do is although it's not very good to put them in forest, I'm going to put them in that forest, and I think I'm going to charge them. They're light cavalry, so they might just immediately retreat, which they can do without penalty. Now, see, that's not right. Well, maybe it is right. I don't know. Let's turn to these guys and. So we just broke them. No, I don't want to. I want to hit them. Oh. Let's see. So they're disrupted. Let's go ahead and hit them. Now they're fragmented. I could charge them, but I'm not going to do that. But I am going to shoot them. I actually didn't mean to move. I just meant to turn in their direction. But so these guys, see, it says half arc of fire. You want to. Oh, I can't turn away from a priority enemy, which is this guy. Let's see. Let's see who we have not moved. The Cuirassiers, Polish Wing Hussars. These guys. Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. But. Oh, yeah. And you just gonna whittle these guys down. If you can see in the bottom right, I'm shooting at Hydux on their side. They've lost 107 of 500 men so far. So they're starting to lose a pretty good amount of people. I didn't even see how many we hit there. So see, they're already disrupted just from this battery shooting at them. There we go. Didn't hit anything. Shoot them. We're starting to whittle those guys down a little. Here we go. Unlimbered. Okay. So you limber it up to move it and then unlimber it to shoot it. But you can't shoot it on the turn you unlimber it, so. Oh, I do want to move these guys. Because I want to turn them around so that they'll be facing. All right, so that's it. Let me know what you think, and I'm honestly I'm glad to be back. Thank you all for the ones that gave me compliments. For the ones that asked if I was ever going to come back, I kept telling you I would. Circumstances have let me come back at this point, so you hopefully will see a lot more of me in the near future. So until next time, see you later. This is Gilmer.